Everybody, I'm Tim from Timber Ridge Gifts. So in this video we're going to be talking about how to conduct proper wick testing. It's probably the most common question I get through my channel, and 9 times out of 10 it's the most common culprit for a poor performing candle. So let's jump right into it, talk about some of the supplies we're going to need. You're going to need the container that you're going to use, obviously, some way to label your containers, and I always tell people the best place to start is a good wick sample kit, rather than just getting on a wick guide, finding the proper size, just ordering a bunch of that and running with it like a lot of people do. You want to get a good sample kit so that way you can actually do your testing. Lone Star Candle Supply, I want to give them a shout out and thank them for all the supplies that you're going to see in this video today. They make a master wick sample kit. It's actually 5 each of every wick in every size that they make. They sell this on their website. I believe it's 45 and some change. Best place to start. I would definitely pick one of these up. If you're familiar with my channel at all, you know I like to give things away. They've actually given me an additional one that I'm going to give away. So make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video to check out how you're going to be able to qualify for that. So that's really all we're going to need for our supplies. So let's go ahead and talk about how we're going to get it set up and start our testing. Okay, so your first step is going to be the base test. It's basically where we're just going to use the container, the wick, and just straight wax. No color or fragrance oil at this point. This is where you're going to consult your wick guide. The reason you don't want to rely solely on the wick guide is because it basically just goes off of measurements. It's going to give you the basic size wick for that measurement of the container. Problem is not every container is the same. A mason jar candle is going to perform differently than an apothecary jar or maybe a ceramic jar. So basically you're going to want to find your base. What that means is if the wick guide says for a 3-inch container use an Eco 8 wick, you're going to also want to you're going to want to use the Eco 8, the Eco 6, and an Eco 10. You're going to want to find the one it says, then maybe the one above and below it. That's going to be your base. Good rule of thumb is to do that for every series of wicks. You got your LX series, your Eco series, your Zinc, a couple others. And in the final test, when we add our color and our fragrance oil, we're going to want to have one from each of those series to be able to test, because it's going to perform differently depending on the color and the fragrance oil that we're going to use. So we've got everything set up. Most important thing at this step is to go ahead and label. You might think that you're just going to lay them out in an order and be able to remember them. A few hours are going to pass by, so if you think you're going to remember them, chances are you're probably not. So go ahead and label them. Make sure documentation is everything at this point. Next step is go ahead and turn these into candles. Okay, so we got everything turned into candles. Now realistically, this is more likely what you should have. This is this is our range from each of the series suggested by the wick guide. We've got the one the wick guide suggested, then maybe 1 or 2 on either side of it. You won't really need these. These are just for video purposes and for a little bit of fun. It's not going to do me much good to show you what a proper performing wick looks like if I don't have some bad examples at the end to show you. So we know most of these are probably going to be bad. I can look at it and tell that a certain size is too big for this container. But we went ahead and made these just so we can have some do nots at the end. But this is most likely what you're going to have. This is a 16. That's roughly 3 or 4 from each series. So we're going to go ahead and light these, do our initial melt pool test. The way that should go, the general rule to follow is 1 inch per hour. What that means is this is a 2.5 inch container. So it should take 2.5 hours for it to reach melt pool. For 3-inch container, it would be 3 hours and so on. That should be the perfect timing for it to reach the melt pool. It shouldn't reach melt pool, a full melt pool, any sooner than that. And it definitely shouldn't take any longer than that for it to be properly sized. For a proper melt pool, I'll show you when they're done. But basically, we want 1/4 to 1/2 inch of melted wax on top, fully melted, nice even burn, nice non-flickering wick. I'll show you all that once we get there. Now all that's left to do is go and light these up, wait our 2.5 hours, and see how they look. Okay, so out of the 16 that I picked from each series, or the total of 16 that I picked for all the series, I picked out one from each series that I really liked. A couple others were pretty good, but I believe these are the ones that I'm going to go with. So let's talk about what makes them good. The first thing you'll notice is the melt pool. Ideally, it's going to be anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 inch. If you're having trouble seeing it, a trick I like to use is you can just take a Sharpie, just mark the level where it's at. Once it dries, you'll be able to see it quite a bit. Each of these is just a bit better than 1/4 inch, so we really like that. Next thing you're going to want to check for is the wick and the flame itself. You can see on each of these wicks there's not a lot of buildup. And if we don't mess with them and keep any wind off of them, they're not flickering, they're not dancing around, they're just a nice steady flame. That's what you want. So that covers our base test. Let's check out some of the ones that we don't want. I'm going to show you what a poorly wicked candle looks like now. Okay, now here's some examples of some poorly wicked candles. If you look at this Eco 14, just look at how big the melt pool is. That's way over 1/2 inch. That's a whole lot bigger than you need. So this candle is definitely over wicked. The wick is too big. If we look at the HTP 104, you can't even see it from this angle. Let's go ahead and move in on it. You can see where it's tunneled and it's not completely burned and created a full melt pool. That is a perfect example of an underwick candle. That wick is way too small for this container. Another thing we want to look for is an overweight candle. There's going to be a lot of buildup of wax on the candle. We call this mushrooming. If you look at this LX30 right here, you can see that big mushroom ball forming at the top. What that is, that's wax that has traveled up the wick. It's traveling up, too much wax is traveling up the wick faster than the wick can naturally burn it off. So it's basically turning to carbon and collecting on the top of our wick. That's where you get a lot of your soot and everything else on your jar. So this candle, this wick is definitely way too big for this container just because of the way it's mushrooming. Now a lot of wicks are going to naturally mushroom. It's not necessarily a bad thing within reason. If you look at this the zinc core wick, if you look at the zinc wick, if you look at the size difference in the mushroom between the LX and the zinc, that's not bad. The melt pool is not quite where I want it to be to where I'd actually use this for this size container. Just wanted to show an example of the kind of an acceptable level of mushrooming. You can see the difference in the two. That one is definitely a lot smaller than this one. This wick is still just a tad bit bigger, or a tad bit too big for this container, but it's definitely not as bad as this one. Okay, before we move on to the next step in our testing, let's talk about our leftovers real quick. The reason a lot of people are hesitant to do large-scale testing is because of the amount of waste and materials and supplies needed. Like right here, I've got about 20 pounds of wax and maybe 30 jars. So all in all, that's about $50 worth of supplies. A lot of people aren't going to be able to do that. I'm going to show you a real quick way to actually be able to recycle and reuse all of this. All we're going to need to do is get ourselves a disposable roasting pan, a cooling rack. What we want to do is just go ahead and cut off as much of the burnt part of the wick as possible. Go ahead and get it out of there. We'll just set these upside down on the cooling rack. Place as many as we can on there to make sure it's not going to overflow. And just put that in the oven at about 140, 150. After about an hour, those will be completely drained. The wick will still be left in there. From that point, all you have to do is just pop the wick out, wash the jar. It's as good as new. You can take that, and the wax is completely fine and reusable. Okay, now let's check out the next step. Our base test has told us that these are our 4 best options for this container size. We got the Eco 8, HTP 83, the LX 18, and the CD 10. Now would be where you would record this information. The good part is we never have to do that base test again for this size container. We already know that no matter what fragrance oil we're going to use, we'll get onto that in the next step, We already know that these 4 wicks are going to perform the best in this container with this particular wax that we're using. So we're going to record that information. If we go to make this candle again, we already know what our options can be. So now on to the next step. Now we're going to do what's called the performance test. Each one of these by itself would probably be okay, but as I make these and sell them, I want them to be as good as I can possibly make them. So although the Eco 8 would probably have a good hot throw, it's got a great melt pool, it would be well enough to sell as a candle. I want my customers to have the absolute best I can give them. So what I'm going to do is each of these 4 best options that I found, I'm going to test each one of them in a candle that I would sell to determine which of them gives the best hot throw. So in order to do that, we're basically just going to take each of these wicks and make a fresh new candle out of them. We're just going to start with a new container, new wick. For this one, we're going to be using a Cool Water by Lone Star, and it just seems like it should be blue. So we're going to be using the Country Blue Liquid Dye from Lone Star. So let's go ahead and make these into 4 new candles, and we can start our performance test. Okay, so we've got our candles made into actual candles using our dye and our fragrance oil. Now we're going to start the performance test. It's always a good idea, like I said before, you don't have to, once you determine your base wicks for this size container, you're done with that part. But anytime you switch up the dyes and the fragrance oil, it's always a good idea to take your base wicks and just do another performance test just to make sure that everything's going to go okay. We're going to find out which is the best for this fragrance oil and dye, but it may not be the best choice for another fragrance oil we choose. All 4 of these would be good, but one of these is going to be the greatest, and that's going to switch up depending on different factors involved with your fragrance oil and your dye. So now basically all we're going to do is just light these for another 2.5 hours, just to kind of double check to make sure the melt pool is going to do what we want it to. We can also check the hot throw as we go. It's best to just go ahead and put these, if you can, put these in just separate equal sized rooms, just so they each have the best chance of giving the exact same results. So let's go ahead and light these up for 2.5 hours and see how they do. Okay, so 2.5 hours in from our initial burn. As you can see, all the wicks are pulling up just great, just like they did in the base test. So we know there's probably not going to be any issues with those. Now all that's left to do is just go ahead and blow these out for now. Once they've rehardened, put them in their separate rooms and just burn them down in 4-hour increments. I like to burn the entire candle just to make sure it's going to be consistent all the way through. Hopefully at the end of that, we'll be able to pick the greatest of these 4. The burn time on this size candle is about 60 hours. So let's go ahead and do our 4-hour increments. Fast forward to 60 hours and we'll see what we come up with. Okay, so our test burn period's over. You can see they all burn nice and clean and evenly. This part is going to be really subjective. It's basically up to you to interact with each candle, walk into the room that it's in, and kind of rate the hot throw yourself. I like to do it on a scale of 1 to 10. I'll walk into the room, okay, maybe it smells like a 7. Walk into the next one, that one's only at like a 5. And I'll just write that down and kind of, just as I go throughout the day, I'll just keep progress on each one and see how it's doing. Most important thing is just take detailed notes. Now that I've done this, I know everything I need to know for this particular fragrance oil, making this size candle. So if I make a batch of these, they sell out, 2 months later I need to go remake it. Don't have to go through any of this. I just consult my notes and just burn right through it. So that's really it. Just based on the my perception of these, the testing that I did on all 4 of these, my personal opinion, I think the CD10 performed the best. They all burn nice and evenly, but I think the 10 had the best hot throw. So now I know when I make this particular batch of candles in this container, I'll be using the CD10 wax. That's really all there is to it. If you missed anything or you didn't think I explained something well enough, just feel free to comment. I will have a list of instructions in the comments or in the description. So if I did kind of fly over anything, you can just read in the description to catch up. Now let's talk about the giveaway. Okay, like I said in the intro, all the wicks used in this video were compliments of Lone Star Candle Supply. They supplied me with their Master Wick sample kit, which has 5 of every size, every series wick that they make. I think that came up to 315 total wicks in this kit. Some excellent to have, excellent to you can test just one pack of this. You can pretty much do all of your testing for an extended period of time. Different fragrance oils, different size containers that you're going to use. Really a great thing to have. So not only did they provide me with one to demo in the video, they also provided me with an extra one to give away to one of my lucky subscribers. So in order to be eligible for the giveaway on this, all you're going to need to do is just be a subscriber to my channel and just share this video somewhere on your social media. Just hit the share button right there, that little arrow. I'm probably pointing at the wrong side, so I'm going to point at both. Just hit the arrow, hit share. It can be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, wherever you want to share it. A lot of my giveaways, I only allow one entry. I'm going to allow multiples for the same person on different social medias. So what you do is just share it somewhere on your social media. Like say you share it on Facebook. Then just come back to the comment section. Just comment where you shared it, Facebook. Then you can come back the next day, or if you want to space it out a little bit better, come back, share it again on Instagram. Come back, leave Instagram in your comments. Not that hard. It is April 6th, so we're going to be picking the winner on April 22nd. So I'll put I'll highlight the comment with the winner in the comments, let you guys know who won and that I have picked a winner. So thanks for watching. Good luck with your wick testing, and make sure you enter for this giveaway. Thanks, y'all.